name is William C. Wright, Jr., and I was in the Army, and my rank was Specialist 5th Class.
I'm Gene Bryant, Chief Warrant Officer CW5, retired from the Army. I had 4.5 years in the Navy and 36 years in the Army, for a total service of 40 years and 5 months.
Fred Aragon, United States Navy, First Class Petty Officer, Data Processing Tech.
My name is Clem Rawlins, and I was in the Air Force, Airman 2nd Class.
My name is Dennis Harris, or Deke, as most people know me. I was in the United States Coast Guard, and when I got out, I was a 3rd class electronic technician.
My name is Nicholas Pongalo. I'm in the United States Air Force.
My name is James Bessick. I was in the United States Army for 30 years. I retired at the rank of Chief Warrant Officer 4, 1992.
I was Sergeant Chalmers B. Rose, go by Bob, and I was in the Army in construction engineers.
Karen Peterson was in the Navy, and I was a Petty Officer 2nd Class.
I'm Roger Peterson. I was a sergeant in the Army National Guard.
My name is Lynn Foose, and I was in the Air Force Nurse Corps, and my rank was First Lieutenant when I got out, so if I'd have stayed in, I'd have gotten Captain.
Calvin Fletcher, used to go by Cal, United States Air Force, and I was a Buck Sergeant, which is an E4 non-commissioned grade.
Charles Ramsey. I was in the U.S. Army, and actually I served as an enlisted and also an officer. So as enlisted, I was a Specialist 4, and then was a 2nd Lieutenant after that, after going through ROTC at Clemson University.
My name is Arthur Douglas Steinberg. I was in the Army during the Korean War.
Brandon Tyson, United States Navy. Rank was E4.
Name is Scott Moore. Okay. Branch of service was the Army, and rank was Sergeant.
My name is Mark Peterson. I was in the Navy, and I was a hospital corpsman, HM3 is the rank.
My name is Trish Pickrell. I was in the Navy for 5 years, and I was an E4, a Petty Officer 3rd Class.
Kevin Hughes, and I was in the Navy, and I was a Petty Officer 3rd Class.
Steve Tatter, United States Army, and in the regular Army I was a Sergeant E5.
My name is Kevin Pickrell. Branch of service was Marine Corps, and when I got out, my rank was Corporal E4.
Right.
My name is Stan Widener. The branch was the United States Navy, and when I got out, I was a E5 or 2nd class.
Harry Moore, United States Marine Corps, E4 Corporal.
They had the better schools at the time and travel.
Well, at the time, the draft was going on, but with the Air Force and the Navy, they had a lot of good schools that you could attend. And then looking into it, I liked what the Air Force was offering at the time as far as education.
Back in that day, at my age back then, when you was a little troublesome, that's what you did. You went in the military, if you wanted to fight, you wanted to go, And so I guess that's why I did it. I wanted to quit school and go to work, and my daddy didn't want me to do that. So the only thing he would go along with was me joining the military. And I joined when I was 17. Of course, he had to sign the paper. I never seen him write his name so fast. I said, well, that was quick. But he knew it was the right thing. And it was a good thing. It was rough. But I enjoyed it. I tell you, it changed my attitude, that's for sure.
That's an interesting story. I was coming back. I lived down in Southwest Virginia, and I had to go from my hometown of Clintwood, Virginia, to Big Stone Gap, which was the closest recruiting place. and I was going to join the Air Force, but he never showed up. So when I was thumbing back home, an Army recruiter picked me up, drove me almost to the house. But by the time we got there, he had convinced me to join the Army.
Choose that branch.
I chose it right out of high school because I went into their nuclear engineering program. I actually was studying to be, believe it or not, a nuclear physicist.
I didn't want to carry a gun, and I figured maybe in the Air Force I wouldn't get shot at as much.
The Navy, when I went into the Navy back in the 60s, we still had to draft. And I lived in a little small area, small town, everybody knew everybody, and you had a draft board. And your number, you had a number. Anyway, I was told that my number was coming up to be drafted into the Army. This was during the Vietnam era, and I didn't want to go to Vietnam in the Army. So I decided I would go in the Navy and have a nice dry place to sleep, and 3 warm meals, and all that good stuff. And I ended up on the riverboats of Vietnam wearing the same fatigues that the Army was wearing. I got out for a short time and decided that the civilian world was not for me. So I went back in the Army. And as I just said, I did 36 years in the Army, held various positions over a 36-year period.
I had to finish high school and still wanted to go to college full time. So National Guard was easiest, and the Air National Guard wasn't there that day, and the National Guard reached out to me, or the Army reached out to me. So I just talked to the first recruiter.
I think the reason I chose the Coast Guard was because, to me, it sounded more like a club than a service. I mean, it was not one that was normally thought of as going into battle, and the time frame that I was in, there was no military conflicts going on.
Because my brother was in the Navy also, and he tried to talk me out of it and go into the Air Force, but I was having none of it.
When you're drafted, you go where they tell you to go.
Honestly, I grew up, my hero was John Wayne. I watched the Green Berets I don't know how many times, hundreds of times. He was in the Army. So well, that's it. I'm joining the Army.
I chose Marine Corps because I felt like it was a challenge. I needed to put myself through a challenge.
My older brother was in the Navy. It seemed like a good fit.
Do I have to tell you? It beat the Army and Marines. And my husband, Jerry, was going in. He was drafted. That's when they had the lottery, and his number was 13. So I finished up nursing school, and I joined right behind him.
I wanted to be a paratrooper.
Did you make that goal?
Yep.
Well, when I was about 10 years old, I was on a rowboat with my uncle, and my uncle happens to be a priest. And he told me a story about the Navy. So when I was 10 years old, I said, when I grow up, I'm going to join the Navy.
I didn't choose it, they chose me.
Oh.
I tried to get in the Coast Guard because I worked for a man who owned he had a 40-foot boat. And I thought that'd be a fun job to have. And when I got to the Coast Guard recruiting station, they said, you don't pass because you're pink-purple colorblind. So I couldn't read the flags.
Oh.
And so they said, we don't want you, the Air Force doesn't want you, the Marines don't want you, but the draft board will be happy to draft you.
Originally I was drafted, but I was turned down for the military. So I volunteered.
And I have no reason for joining. Honestly, it was July of 2009, I believe. I was walking on the beach down in Myrtle Beach and just decided I wanted to join the military. And my mom at the time hated me for that decision.
Get a chance to see some different parts of the world, because I knew that they did travel, if you will, to different parts of the world, not just in the United States.
So when I graduated from high school, I actually decided to go to college for 1 year, and actually was planning on going for 4 years, and while I was in, I decided that school wasn't the best thing for me at the time, and so I decided that after my first year that I would, go ahead and go in the Army and try to figure out what I wanted to do with myself.
My parents really didn't have money for college, and so I would get money for college. And, when actually, I thought the school that I would take in the Navy I could use as a job when I got out, but then I ended up choosing college, so it worked out both ways.
I volunteered. I did have a draft number. My draft number was 82. The draft had just ended, so even though I had a draft number, I would not have been forced into the military.
I was bored.
You were bored?
I was not drafted. It was voluntary. I joined the military because there's a few reasons. I felt like I would have been a burden to my parents financially if I'd have gone to college. The Marine Corps taught me how to do a job, and I felt like that when I got out, I'd be able to get a civilian job by what I learned in the Marine Corps.
I got my draft notice in the mail in January of 1966, and it was either going to be the Army or the Marines. And a friend of mine from high school, he got his the same time, and we decided to go over to, at the time I was living in Florida, he decided we would go over to Tampa and talk with the Air Force recruiter. And we did, and the recruiter gave us some tests, and the recruiter told me I could just about do anything I wanted to, and I said, well, I like to do anything but electronics. He said, no problem. Well, then I enlisted, and then they sent me to electronics school.
My daddy was a coal miner. When I graduated from high school, I went to work with him for 1 day, and that was enough. Too dark down there and too cold. Didn't like it. Told Daddy I wasn't going back to the mine, so he says, well, you got to find something. So back then, this was 1961, Army was the best choice out there for me.
Well, at the time I finished high school. I wasn't sure just what I wanted to do, and as far as college, the opportunity to go to college, I needed to get some money together to do it. And it looked like a good opportunity to learn a trade and go to school, and then have money to go to school after I got out of there.
I think I joined the military to grow up.
During the Vietnam era, I didn't go to Vietnam. I had orders to go there, but like I said, I had an older stepbrother, and back then, for some reason, they didn't seem to send two family members at the same time like they have been done later wars. But so I didn't go. But all at one time, I went from Vietnam to Germany to Subic Bay, Philippines. I went to 4 different places. Never left Camp Lejeune. And then at the end of the day, they sent me to Marine Barracks, Morocco, Africa.
In the 40-year period, you had a little bit of both. Because we had the Vietnam era. Of course, they said that was the war. It was a police action, I think they called it. And then, of course, we had the various other conflicts going on during that 30 or 40-year period, up through, Afghanistan, Iraq, and, Somalia, and Panama, and those sort of things. So it's kind of a little bit of both. I don't think we ever declared a real war during that time. I think maybe they considered Iraq a war. I don't recall, to tell you the truth. They have different labels now. Police action, various other wording they use now would be politically correct, I guess would be the word, but yeah.
Both. I did 4 tours in Vietnam, and then on my last tour, we were off the coast of Mogadishu for 4 months.
Where's the Mogadishu?
Mogadishu is in Somalia.
Okay, so kind of by the Horn of Africa?
No, it's up on the eastern side of Africa, up north.
Okay.
if any of you saw the movie Black Hawk Down, that was Mogadishu.
Okay.
That was Mogadishu. We were sent there just after the Black Hawk Down incident. So
It was during the Vietnam conflict.
Absolutely blessed that for some reason we all thought we were infantry, airborne infantry, and we just knew from basic training once we got out we were going to get thrown into some conflict. And like I said, I was just absolutely blessed to not have been in any conflict. So it was.
I have not seen any wartime. With my previous job, they considered us deployed in place because of how important our job was. So they did not allow us to go over to Iraq or Afghanistan and join in any of those missions.
I served from July of 1983 through July of 1988, so 5 years, and the majority of that time was peacetime, although we did have some small conflicts.
The Iraqi War. I went to Iraq in 2006 and then again in 2011.
Along about 65, Vietnam flared up. And if you were in the Army then, you're just about assured that you were going to go to Vietnam, which I did. I went in 1968. I was a staff sergeant. I went to the 1st Battalion, 27th Field Artillery, located at Tay Ninh, which is about 20 or 30 miles from the Cambodian border.
Technically wartime, but we were at peace. We didn't have any active conflicts at the time.
Vietnam War, but we're considered Vietnam era as opposed to Vietnam War veterans.
Fortunately, I did not actually serve during peacetime. I do remember a scary moment in basic training where they came in and said, "We've just gone to war down in somewhere down in Cuba or something like that," just scared everybody to death. But fortunately, I wasn't actually. When you're in, you just want to be prepared, training wise, and your education, just military training, to be able to go and do something like that if you are called to do it. So fortunately, the 4 years that I was in, I didn't have to go.
There was a war going on in Korea. However, I was very fortunate. From A through the middle of the R's, everybody getting out of basic training went to Korea. The middle of the R's through the end of the alphabet, they either were sent to Germany or Italy, and I was sent to Italy.
The Vietnam War had just ended, and it was peacetime. It was 1975 when I joined, and they started pulling troops back in 74. When I was working in a hospital, however, a prisoner of war in Vietnam had just returned. So he'd been in Vietnam he'd been a prisoner, I guess, for about 10 years, and he went to the hospital that I worked at, and they closed off this place where he worked so they could interrogate him. And he spoke clear Vietnamese, not very good English. He had forgotten most of it.
During the war.
What war or conflict was that?
Vietnam.
Went over during wartime, which they didn't consider a war. It was a police action, but there was fighting when I went over there. But then it went into what they call peace talks. The last few months I was there, there wasn't a whole lot of fighting going on. So.
Well, there were a few hostile actions while I was in. I did not deploy to those hostile actions. I was what I referred to as a Clinton Marine. Bill Clinton was the president at the time, and it didn't seem like that he was willing to put boots on the ground for some of the events that occurred. The bombing of the Cole, Haiti. They did deploy to Haiti. They did an amphibious assault on Haiti and secured the airfield first, and then moved further inland to regain control of the country. And I was in for Somalia.
Very cold. I went to boot camp for the Navy's in Great Lakes, Illinois, which is right up on Lake Michigan in Chicago area, and it's February, and the wind always blows about 30 miles an hour off the lake, so instead of just doing calisthenics, if you got in trouble, they would send you outside and just make you stand at parade rest, but you couldn't stand more than 10 minutes because you'd get frostbite, so. Very windy, the barracks at night, you could hear the wind whipping through there, it was cold, windy.
The first few weeks are just a blur. No, I'm not a morning person, but no, the first week they wake you at like 4:30. Yeah, and girls are passing out. So they yell at you, and you have to jump up and stand. You know, and a few passed out from the sudden jolt. You know.
Tough, I guess. When I went in the Navy, I was, we'll just say young and wild would be a good term for it. And I got in some trouble for fighting, and so I went to the brig for 30 days. So I'll probably hold a record. I've only been in the military for 9 days, and I went to the brig for 30 for fighting. And I was in the brig for 30 days, and when I got out, the company I was in had moved on, so I went to a new company starting over. And when you're in the brig, they label you as the brig rat. And whatever went wrong in the company, whatever trouble they got into, it was a brig rat's fault. I spent many an hour a day scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush because I caused the problem, but didn't. But anyway, the brig rat got blamed for any of the problem. So I had a tough boot camp. Those who say they had tough, I said, yeah, you don't know what tough is. You tried to go through it twice, you know.
Different for an officer. We don't actually have boot camp per se, but they do send us to field training, which is somewhat like that, which is just you go march around. They give you like 4 hours of sleep, wake you up at the crack of dawn, and very stressful environment. But it was a lot of fun. It was, 4 weeks that I will never get back, but
interesting. I loved it. I loved the Army. It didn't faze me at all.
Paris Island, I'm gonna tell you what, took the train from Baltimore, because I lived up there at the time, got down there, got off at Charleston, they put us on a bus, and the guy on the bus, as he was taking us, he gave us all a little motivational talk about, well, if you do like you're told. See, because I went in the end of March and I graduated on June 8th, so that's April, May. It's like 9 or 10 weeks thing. And I'll be back to pick you up sometime in June. And you don't think that was bad, but when you got off at the bus at Paris Island, there's feet prints painted and you stand at attention. And I'm going to say, that's when pure hell broke loose. I mean, it was something that you would never imagine in your life.
Boot camp was a little rough. Only because I really wasn't used to the structure and the discipline of boot camp. It was an adjustment. It wasn't so much that it was difficult, it was just an adjustment that I had to make. I think the worst part of boot camp for me was learning how to swim. Because when I joined the military, I had no clue how to swim, and I'm still not a good swimmer.
It's very enlightening. And playing sports, so I had some little idea of how as far as discipline would be. But I think really it would be very beneficial for every young man to have that experience.
Very beautiful setting. And so I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think I actually really gained an appreciation for the outdoors being a
It was kind of hard at first. I mean, I certainly missed my family. I hadn't been away from my family for that long of time. But after a couple of weeks, I began to feel like I was part of another family, if you will. The guys that I was there with, they were all going through the same thing. And I think that was probably one of the most important things that I took away from boot camp was the friendships, the camaraderie, I'll get it right in a minute, and becoming part of a group, feeling like I belonged.
The great thing about that was it taught me the value of things that I took for granted.
Oh, that was a revelation, if you're like me, wake up in the morning at home, get out of bed, you don't make your bed, you don't pick up your clothes, You know, you get ready for school or whatever, you just walk out the door. On the Army, the revelation was that there's nobody going to pick up after you. Mother's not with you.
Jump school, you have a couple different training scenarios that they run you through. There's a small 35-foot tower that they hook you up to and basically throw you down a zip line, and you simulate flying through the air there and getting your risers. Those are the lines that attach to your chute, keeping them straight and doing these sorts of things, and they catch you at the end. And then from there you progress on to a 250-foot tower where they put you in a harness. You've got a parachute that's already open above you, and it's in a canopy, and it lifts you up 250 feet. Chute is already open. It releases, you come down, and you practice your parachute landing fall, or PLF. And they tell you keep your knees bent, look towards the horizon, that sort of thing. And ironically, the very first guy that went up there, when he came down straight-legged, hit the ground, broke his leg, and every one of us back there was watching this happen, and of course everyone just kind of like froze. And you know, they immediately got the guy up, and I'm sure somebody was giving him a hard time for having straight legs and doing exactly what you weren't supposed to do, and they immediately put us back out there, and that was good, because I think if they would have given us enough time, there probably would have been some people that said, I'm not doing it, I'm not going, no broken leg for me. So that was pretty fun.
It's different. I have always worn short hair because my hair is very curly. It was darker then. And some of the guys that wore longer hair, they didn't want to get their hair shaved. They use a razor on you, not a razor, a hair clipper. And everybody has to go through that because they want you. In the military, you have to learn that what they say, you do. It's a good way to get people to do what they're asked to do.
Difficult. It's a life-changing experience.
Hard, but doable. I look back on it with fond memories, but it was a hard time. I did a lot of growing up in those 8 weeks, but it was good.
It was the worst experience in my life. I thought it would never end, and I would play tricks to get out of it because I did not like it. We had a job to do of cleaning trash cans, and one of the things I would used to do is I would put my head in the trash can and I would spray water, steamy hot water, and when I would take my head out of the trash can, I was all soaky wet, and my boss came by and says, "Oh, Peterson, you're working too hard. Go take a break." So then I would go take a break, go back, clean one more trash can, come out all sweaty, and take another break.
Oh, that's funny.
When I left boot camp, however, I remember all the people I met and friends, and it was probably one of the best times I've ever had.
Yeah, that was pretty terrible. It's it takes maybe a week, and then it kind of sinks in where like it doesn't matter what you do. Like you could have done it like as best as you could have, or it was perfect, but the drill sergeants don't care. They'll still yell at you or find something to yell at you for something, or they'll make something up to yell at you about. And then once you like realize it's just kind of a game with them, then you just kind of like take the beating and like, okay, well, moving on to the like you can never win. And once you realize that, it gets a lot easier.
Wonderful. No, it's something that I recommend for a lot of young men and women to that degree too. Just depends on what you're looking for out of life. But boot camp was a wonderful situation. There were a lot of guys who lost weight to get in shape there, and then I was the opposite of that. I actually gained weight. I gained 15 pounds of muscle when I was in boot camp. So.
It was almost tougher than overseas. That was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. It was 13 weeks of infantry training. And we went through all the weapons and all that kind of stuff, you know, fired them all. everything from rifles to pistols and all those kind of things. So that, it was pretty tough. But
it was basically getting your feet wet. It was no physical activity for us as it was for the enlisted.
Boot camp was 13 weeks of mind torture. It was physically demanding, a lot of getting used to things, but that's why they make it tough, is it mentally prepares you for what's coming.
Rough.
Well, in '83, in November of '83, was the Marine Barracks bombing, and that was. I had just gotten into Little Creek Base that night. I hadn't even unpacked my bags, and they came in looking for volunteers to go out to the Mediterranean to support the troops. You guys this is way before your time, but there was a situation where the Marine Barracks was bombed and they needed some help. And ironically, 35, 40 years later, it's still the same thing in the Middle East. So there's still conflict.
Wasn't a great deal going on. We're talking about 1958, so, and it was leading up to a time of great turmoil. But at 1958, things were somewhat slow. So it wasn't a great deal going on, and work was hard to come by to get a good job.
Yes.
So I needed to go into service to get more education.
Let's see, it was in 1993, so it was just after the first Iraq War and right before the second.
It was between the Gulf Wars, so I didn't get any of that. It seemed like a fairly settled time, I think, while I was in, so I was lucky in that regard.
Demonstrations. Matter of fact, when I was in high school, I was even in a demonstration against the war in Vietnam.
It was during the time when after World War II, when the United States was still in Germany, helping them to rebuild the country.
It was the middle 80s, so there wasn't, only had a little, I think it's called Grenada, was a little excursion, but nothing really on a wartime things was going on. It was really a peaceful time as far as wars and things in the 80s.
Well, people really were anti-military back then because of the Vietnam War. There was marches against war, and they did not appreciate people in the military. And let me give you an example. When I went to France on my honeymoon, I met a person at a bar, and he said, you were a sailor in the military? I said, yes. And he started buying me drinks. And in America, people would not buy you drinks or anything like that. So they appreciated the military over in France. Now things are different.
Well, I mentioned a few already, Haiti, Somalia, the bombing of the Cole. Militarily, those are the events that went on. I didn't really pay much attention to anything else that was going on.
Carter was president, and I guess during my last year was when it was the Iranian hostages.
It's going to be a tough one to answer because most of the places I was stationed or was functioning doing it my 40 years. News was slim to none. Plus I was young and really didn't care, to be honest with you. But during the Vietnam era, of course, we had all the demonstrations going on and that sort of thing. Of course, we had 9/11. It's certainly a big event. I guess what we did go on in the United States was something that I remember as much as anything. But 3 days before I got at the Navy, we had the first walk on the moon, which was important to us back then. Today, it's nothing as compared to what we have going on in space, but I do remember that going
on. National Defense Ribbon, which everybody gets that, and then I made expert rifleman, expert pistol, and then when I got out, I got a good conduct ribbon.
No special awards or recognitions. Got probably negative recognition a few times there for not following the rules and doing whatever. Got in trouble a few times, but nothing on the positive side.
I have 2 Army Commendation medals, one for each
This is the ribbons, awards and decorations I got. This is the Legion of Merit. It's the 6th highest award there is in the Army. Bronze Star, got 2 of those. Meritorious Service Medal, Purple Heart. I picked up some shrapnel in Vietnam. Army Commendation Medal. Army Achievement Medal. Good Conduct. National Defense. Vietnam Campaign Medal. This is Vietnam, Southwest Asia. This is, no, Southeast Asia. This is Saudi Arabia, Southwest Asia. And the rest of these are sort of like Cracker Jack prizes. You just be in there long enough, they'll give them to you.
I have after 4 years, you can get a good conduct medal.
I received an Army Commendation Medal. You have, as an infantry soldier, you actually have to qualify for with your rifle. So you get a, like a marksman award for that. I went to a lot of different schools. I went to airborne school and jumped out of planes down at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I went to chemical warfare school and got some training there. And probably got a few other awards. I just honestly can't remember, but nothing, not a Purple Heart or anything like that. But definitely did receive some things over the years.
I received several medals, unit citations. We were involved in Operation Restore Hope, I think it was called. We rescued some Haitians from as they were trying to escape some of the there was a coup that was happening at the time, so they were fleeing the country, and we pulled them out of the ocean off of small, man-made rafts that weren't seaworthy.
A couple Army ARCOMs, a Purple Heart, Combat Infantryman's Badge. All some air medals.
The military is big on honoring its service people. Good conduct awards, service ribbons, things of that nature. Going overseas, doing med cruises, you get awards for that sort of thing.
A couple accommodation medals, AAMs, that sort of thing. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Really, what you get for being in. You get a couple service ribbons, for joining and being there, and I think probably an ARCOM, a couple AAMs, ARCOMs, nothing big.
Well, I won a chess tournament in the Navy. I am actually the 9th Naval District Chess Champion. And because I won the tournament, they flew me to Virginia to play in a national tournament, chess tournament for the Navy. So I represented the Navy in a national chess tournament. I think I took 5th place in that.
That's good.
But yes, that's no military awards, but
still. A chess award.
6, so I will be retired 10 years this coming January. And for me personally, it's been a tough time. Military is very structured. Civilian world's not. And I had a tough time adapting to that.
I got married and I had a son, so it was quite a change when I got out. And when I finished my time, I was in Arch Entry in Newfoundland. So transitioning from Newfoundland back here and trying to get work to support a family, it was a little bit trying, but perseverance, and it worked out.
Real easy because I started reprogramming myself almost 3 years out. I started making my readjustments at 3 years, and then at 18 months before I was due to retire, I went ahead and put in my paperwork to do the retirement. So, yeah, a lot of people have that problem because they don't take the time to try to get themselves readjusted, and I've known quite a few guys that have retired and then either committed suicide or died for one reason or another because they don't take the time to make that readjustment.
Well, being as we were only in 3 or 4 years, the adjustment, it was like living out of a suitcase, because we went from Mississippi to Montgomery, overseas to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. So it was, right much travel and movement, upheaval. So when we got home, it was very relaxing to be at home with family and to be grounded.
While I was at McDill, I had an opportunity to interview for a job and before I got out, and I got out May 29th of 1969, and I started work the following Monday. So I had no issues of finding work, and what I had learned in the service, I was able to apply to this job. So it was a pretty good thing.
It was more of a surreal feeling because home didn't quite feel like home anymore. It took about a month for me to get used to driving like a car again, and like everyone else is kind of going about their day, and to them everything was normal, but to me it was kind of foreign.
It's like you're seeing it all again for the first time.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. It was relatively easy.
When I was in the service, one of the things that I actually did was try to really stay integrated with the community outside of the military base. So I was involved with the church that I was going to, and just I lived off a base and in an apartment complex. So that actually got me an opportunity to get away from military life and sort of get back to what I was used to before I went into the service.
I just didn't care.
You just kind of went with the flow?
I just didn't care.
Would you, if you had the chance, would you re-enlist?
Yep.
Same branch, or would you choose a different?
It was actually pretty quick. I mean, I still remember the last day I was in. I was at Fort Bragg, left and went around to all the different places, and you have a long sheet with a bunch of checks on it. You got to get a check from the finance guy, a check from the dental guy, a check from here, a check from there. Had all that taken care of in one day. Figured it would take weeks to get all this taken care of. Finished in a day. Okay, when you're finished with your checklist, you're done. Drove over to the local county seat where we were in Harnett County in North Carolina. And they give you a big long form with a bunch of stamps on it saying you've been honorably discharged and that sort of thing. And they told you, you need to take that to the county seat, the courthouse, whatever it's called, and have a record of that copied, and they save it. Got that taken care of, and when I was done, I was driving back to the house. We lived in Dunn, North Carolina. It's about 20 miles north of Fort Bragg, and okay, what's next?
It took some getting used to, but I was only in for 5 years, so people that were in for longer, I'm sure, hadn't have a little bit of a more difficult time adjusting, but for me, it wasn't that difficult.
For me, it was very easy. It was not a hard transition.
Much better. I realized as much as I went into what I was studying and doing, I'm not a person that colors in the lines well there, so I was much happier being back out in the civilian world.
It was difficult. It really was. You're used to a structured lifestyle. I was still relatively young at age 22 when I got out. So, but I got my feet under me, and the military gave me the tools that I need to move forward.
It was, having a regular paycheck and not having to worry about where the next paycheck was coming from, it kind of relaxes you a little bit, just knowing that it's going to hit your bank account, twice a month. So when I got out, I was still doing the same things that I had done and had been doing but I had no job. I had no paycheck coming in, so I had to actually go find a job, which wasn't terribly difficult, but it was it was an adjustment getting used to non-military occupation. In the military, things are strict, they're orderly. You're given an order, you carry it out. Civilian side, that's not necessarily the case. And if you're in charge of people, you know, it's different in the military. In the military, you can just tell, hey, you need to do this, and they go do it. And there's no question, there's no follow-up, there's you know, the job will get done, but civilian side's a little bit different.
It's actually better for you because a lot of companies like hiring people that are ex-military because they follow instructions. When you get a job and you hire people, if they're not used to taking orders or instructions or following directions, it takes longer to train somebody. But if you hire an ex-military person, they've already had that experience of how to listen and how to ask questions and how to get things done. So it was actually easy.
I was much happier, but I don't regret that I was drafted. It was good for me. It helped me to grow in my thoughts.
It was pretty hard because it took me a while to find a job, and I kind of moved around for a little while until I could get settled.
So, my first assignment, I was in charge of intercontinental ballistic missiles that had nuclear weapons attached to them. So, a lot of people don't realize that we still have over 1,000 nuclear weapons, as does countries like Russia, that we actually are on alert every day. So, for my last 4 years, I went down into a silo for 24 hours at a time, where I was in charge of at least 10 Minuteman III ICBMs. And the ICBM community is the shortest chain to the president for any type of order if it were to come down to that. For the last 4 years, for me and Lauren, it was definitely a stressful time for at least my job, because it was very demanding.
I was always disappointed they didn't send me overseas. In fact, when I asked for it and didn't get it, I was crying. And then I ended up getting sent to where I met my husband. So I think that was God's kind of little maneuver on me. So.
The military is not for everyone. But I would recommend those young people who are getting out of high school, or college for that matter, but primarily high school, who don't really have a direction, don't know what they want to do, so forth. Take a look at the military. It has a lot to offer. All the services do. Each one's a little different because of what you want to do. You have to stop and think about that. I would suggest that they look at more than one service. You know, don't just say, okay, I'm going to do the Marines. Well, okay, it's fine, but take a look at what each service has to offer.
The biggest one was after I got out. Alex was 2 years old, maybe 3. And we were watching the TV, and they had a special on, and they were breaking down ships at a scrapyard, and there was my ship being broken down, and I screamed at the TV, "Oh, that's my ship!" And it scared Alex because I screamed at the TV about seeing my ship on the TV being all cut up and sold off for scrap.
That a military, it just like anything else, you get out of it what you put into it. And like I said before, I think every young man should have some time in the military, some military training.
The military is a wonderful place if you, if you want to see the world, depending on what branch you're in, where you can be stationed at. For all of the, let's say, perceived and potential dangers, which is first and foremost, you have to be prepared to make that decision mentally as to what you're looking for. But I was very happy in the military. Got to travel, got to meet new people, got to see new places, experience world events. So there were a lot of upsides to some of the downsides.
The
mess hall. This is in 2006. I was at a base in it was called Al Assad. It was a Marine base, and we were attached to the Marine Corps. And we had this one mess hall, but because we were one of the larger bases, like C-130s, like the cargo planes would come there. The Army and the Navy Seabees would also use us as like a temporary base. Like they would stop in and stay there for maybe 3 weeks before they go out and do their convoys again. And the Seabees would come out and help like build our infrastructure on the base and everything. So because we were getting so many more people, they started to build another mess hall that was like 3 times the size of the first one. So we were getting really pumped for that, and it took maybe like 6 months to build. And then it was open for about 3 weeks, and then one morning we woke up and it was on fire, and the whole place just burned down. It was just like a kitchen fire that just got out of control. And I guess the fire department didn't have enough water to like put it out, or maybe it was like a chemical fire or something in the kitchen, and they needed something else. But too much of it burned down, and then so we got the new mess hall for 3 weeks, and then it
was back to being packed in.
Yeah, then we all had to go back to the first mess hall. And then we left by the time they got it repaired or rebuilt.
Cool thing was, while we were out there, and I didn't know this, but I guess the other guys did, all of the snowbirds, all of the greatest generation guys who served in World War II were now, obviously all retired and that sort of thing, had their motorhomes, their campers, their whatever. They were out there camping, probably just dry camping somewhere. Well, every day they would come in to Yuma, come into the baseball field, had their chairs, had their coolers, wives, and just set up for the whole day, and that was their day. So we had this huge audience, which was awesome. I mean, they're clapping, they're, slapping you on the back, saying, "You guys are really doing a great job."
No telling what would have happened to me had I not had the discipline that the service gave me. I'm very grateful for that.
If I had my way today, all of the people, those of you interviewing me, anyone getting out of high school, male or female, I think it would hurt or not hurt them to spend a year in the military.
But when I graduated high school, I knew that I was not ready for college. And so this service was a wonderful place for me to be able to go, to grow up, to learn how to be an adult before I actually, in a structured environment that allowed me to do that growing and within boundaries. So the military service is such a wonderful thing for all of our young people. I encourage everybody to at least consider it.
Every chance I got, I went out away from the military base to talk to especially the elderly people in Germany. And the one thing that I found out was that they did not want the war. This was something Hitler pushed on them. They had no problem with the United States whatsoever. It was just something that Hitler wanted to do himself. And they were very bitter too about, let's face it, they lost everything. They lost their homes and everything, the jobs and everything. So it was really hard on those people too. But the younger people, they seemed to be pretty happy. This war was finished and they were beginning to get jobs and do their own thing. So the younger people were happy. But
well, when I enlisted for airborne infantry. Everybody thought I was crazy. And I went through basic at Fort Benning, advanced training at Fort Gordon. Then I went to jump school. And then I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. And then I was in the Pathfinders. I went back Pathfinder school. And I had a buddy of mine in the 82nd. He was 17 also. As soon as we turned 18, the 3rd Brigade of the 82nd came home from Vietnam. And one day he and I kind of thought, well, maybe we ought to go over there and find out what it's all about. And when we tried to volunteer to go to Vietnam, they wouldn't allow us to. But they gave us the option of re-enlisting. So both of us re-enlisted to go to Vietnam.
Did you ever get over there, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a privilege being in and serving in a lot of those areas, but one assignment that I had, I did for a whole summer was, I was on the honor guard that we would go out and do the military burials, so we would have to go out and the vets that had passed away, we would go out and do the military honor guard burials each day there, and really, when you're young and you're 18 and you get in the service and you want to goof off, really you saw what those guys fought for and what you did, because we would go out and be the, like you see on TV, the pallbearers and the gun 21 gun salute. I was part of that group there, and to see what those guys sacrificed during wartime and be there and be a part of the family was really kind of a surreal experience to put it all in perspective.
Yeah, I was in Germany when they built the Berlin Wall. My son was there 30 years later when they tore it down.
Well, I've got these pictures, and this is a little wrinkled and faded. There's a picture of me receiving T-shirts from someone who volunteered to donate them because there was a great need for baby T-shirts. And I was a second lieutenant head nurse of the newborn intensive care nursery at that time, which was a big deal to me to be given that spot, because second lieutenants were never put in charge of anything. So it was quite an honor. And there you go. Flash back to the 70s.
Anything. I mean, the experience of being in the military is incredible. I mean, you're doing something very important for your country and, you know, your own personal development. Now, knowing what I know now, would I want to do it a second time? No. It's very difficult. It's demanding. It's very hard on marriages. I saw a lot of my friends get divorced. The majority of the guys that I went to, that I was going through basic and that we all went up to Fort Lewis, the majority of them got out. So it has to, you have to be the right person to make a career of it. But those that do and make it work, and the ones that are able to keep their marriages together, I mean, I commend them for doing that. And of course, anybody that's serving in the military is doing something great for our country. So.
You mentioned the MASH units before. Did you ever watch MASH on TV?
Yes.
Was it historically correct? Did they do a good job?
It really was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is me. In Germany in 1965. I was a E5 buck sergeant then. That's out in the woods there. I have this is me in Saudi Arabia during the first Gulf War. I was playing Santa Claus here. I always did that every year. This is the soldiers I was with. This was Christmas Day, 1990, I believe. I think I had the aneurysm the next day. So this is the day before. This is Christmas Day. That's me there. This is where we were. That's not snow, that's sand. You gonna be able to get this in there?
Yeah.
Okay, this is sand. Hotter than the hinges of you know what. This is me here. This is the place we were located at. This is Fort Bragg, out in the woods there. This is my family. This is the day we left. There's this is making CW4, Chief Warrant Officer 4. And by the way, this is as high as I could go. There wasn't any higher. But it took 30 years to get there. This is all Germany right here. That's me there. This is down in the basement. All our offices that during this tour were in the basement. This is Fort Bragg. This is getting promoted to Chief Warrant Officer 3. This is Heidelberg. This is a football game we played there. It was called the Godfather Bowl. And being a warrant officer, what this game was is the officers would play the enlisted men.
Maybe some advice. Looking back, I mean, I'm glad I'm where I'm at now. Every decision that I've made has led me to this point. But being in the military it's a unique situation. There's not a whole lot of people that do join the military. So my suggestion is to take full advantage of it. A lot of people will tell you don't volunteer for anything, but at the same time, I mean, volunteer. Do special projects. Do special units. If you're selected for a special unit, you know, go out and do it. It's a little scary making the decision to re-enlist, but if that's where you're being led to, and if that's what you're being led to do, then re-enlist. Take those opportunities while you can, because it makes for good stories later. It makes for good life experience.